All right, I'm here with episode one of Dust US's Best of Five podcast, brought to you by INUI. INUI Gaming, the premier matchmaking service that's running the Dust US Eagle Master Series. And with me today is the recent winners of the Dust US Eagle Master Series, Cashmere from Marsborne. Hello, Cashmere. How are you doing today?
Good. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing good, good. A little under the weather, but nothing to complain about. So to start, so for those who don't know, this is our new podcast, the Best of Five. Essentially, if you watched Max Rounds 30 back in 2020, 2021, it's going to be a similar format to that, where we go through the top news topics relevant to NA in a relatively quick format, but with the addition of a interview section with our special guest every week. So, as previously mentioned, our guest for this week is Kashmir, the general manager of Marsborne, and so we'll hop right into that. So, to start. Uh, who are you and where do you come from? What got you into esports?
So my name is Matthew. I go by Cashmere in the gaming space. I live in Georgia at the moment. What brought me to esports? It's kind of a new venture. We just started at the beginning in January 2025. I have a past in esports historically. Maybe about 10 years ago, I started, worked for a couple years for a variety of teams, and then took a step away to, I guess, go work in what people consider the real world, get some normal jobs under my belt, get some more experience, and have the opportunity to now come back into esports and bring a lot of my experience and things I've learned and new skill sets to the table and try to put together a new program and start a new org.
You mentioned your previous background in esports. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the FGC, correct?
Yeah, primarily. I actually got my initial start in the Halo scene working for a team called Noble Esports. I worked for them for about 6 months to a year underneath the Halo team, being a team manager for Halo. So just travel logistics, sponsor deals, things along those lines. And then I'd always loved fighting games and playing them. Started going to some of the larger events like Evo and CEO and just kind of fell in love with the community and the grassroots culture of it. Started working for Noble then under their FGC, and then transitioned to kind of just being a player liaison for a couple different teams. So mainly like Elevate and Denial. I basically represented players underneath both teams. But as anyone who hears those teams knows, they kind of don't have the best uh, reputation in esports, which is also kind of the reason why I left. While I was under them, the stuff started happening where the orgs weren't paying people, players weren't getting paid, a lot of kind of shady deals happening, and that was happening for me. Where my entire time working with esports, I never once got a paycheck, never was paid. It was kind of just always I loved it and I wanted to turn it into a job, and so these were all opportunities I could take to try to like grow with a team, and then as those kind of negative experiences kept happening, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm getting associated with negative teams. It's not helping me in the long run. And I need to take a step away and try to learn some stuff, try to do some things differently because this approach that I'm having just wasn't quite working.
You mentioned working previously with Denial there and how that ended up being a pretty negative experience. Uh, for context, what period did you work under? Were you under like the original Denial when the original guy ran off with all the money? And can you give us more details on like what was it like being in the midst of that sort of shitstorm as it was developing?
Yeah, so it was really interesting because at the time it was with the original group who owned Denial. I was with Elevate at that time, and as I said, I wasn't getting paid, and so Denial was like, "Hey, you've been doing some really cool stuff in the FGC with Elevate and Noble. We want to move into the FGC, and we'd love to offer you a paid position." So at that point in time, I was like, "Oh, awesome! A salary job in esports. Sign me up. I'm there." Obviously, not doing too much due diligence into the history at that time and some of the rumor mills online. Maybe there was a lot of rumors going on with their Call of Duty team not being funded properly and some things. So, not doing my due diligence, I went cool, signed up, joined the team, and after about 3 months, I had not once been paid. I had made sure that the payments that came through went to the player that was under me that I had signed, but at the time was not being paid myself. And then there was this very quick culmination of just basically communication cut off across the board. You know, it was like when I was being interviewed and hired, I was talking to them and the upper staff. I mean, twice a day, 3 times a day. When I first got brought on, it was constant, like, okay, how are we moving into the FGC? Here's the players we're looking at, tons of communication and back and forths. And then all of a sudden it was just, hey, I'm noticed that I haven't gotten paid yet. Players getting paid. That's awesome. Nothing. Couple more days go by, nothing. Couple more days, and then all of a sudden, the rumor mill on Twitter started exploding, where stuff came out. I think about their COD team, the Rocket League team, like 2, 3 other teams where it's basically across the board, they had just not been paying people, not been funding people, and along with myself, there was, like, 3 or 4 other guys who had been, "Hey, cool, we wanna move into this space. We need someone who's gonna act as our liaison. We'd love to hire you and bring you on to do that," and then they would get teams and not pay any of the people
Mhm.
who had helped accommodate that. So it was like I said, it definitely left a bad taste in my mouth, and the issue too is, I mean, a lot of people are then looking at me being the FGC guy saying, "Oh, you brought denial into the FGC. We weren't having these kind of issues, and now the scene has more of this taint going on in it where we're having orgs come in and not pay players and not pay teams," and, it was really disheartening.
Mhm.
At that point, I had been working in it for like 3, 4 years, going to events, working with players, working with content creators, and the whole time not getting anything for it except for just my love and my passion for it and seeing what I could grow and then, being rewarded with that with, shady teams and empty promises. It really hurt.
And of course, for those who don't know, Denial was in Counter Strike as well, and they sort of pulled the same scam there. Disappeared, and then they got bought by a new owner, reformed Denial, and then that owner also ended up being a scam. For context, people might know like the ATK core of Fady, Elusive, Sonic, JT. Those guys ended up playing for them for a good while before leaving, and they acquired, I think, a South American team, and then that's sort of when everything came tumbling down a second time with the Denial org being a scam, a second time outright. So you end up leaving esports because of that. What ends up drawing you back in?
So kind of just a wild life of things happening. A couple years ago, I got hired by one of the Ledoux brothers, who are the investors who own Marsborne. He was starting a new uh, film production company with a tech focused, developing tech tools for optimizing film production. So I was hired and brought on to work with them there, and it's a lot of project based stuff. A lot of like, cool. Now we're making a movie. Now we're working on pipelines. Now we're working on software development. So just kind of working on a lot of different things, and the whole time we're very immersed within uh, gaming space, content creation as a whole, film production, and the landscape as it's changing. And my whole time I've been, I'm active on Twitch. I watch streamers. I've tried streaming in the past. I'm a big gamer. I just consume nonstop content. I play every new release, and so the whole time it's like I'm always mentioning like, "Oh, did you guys see this new stuff happening with consumer data, with where people are actually spending their time nowadays?" Like in the film space, we talk a lot about who are the biggest competitors for, say, like Amazon, and a lot of people go, "Okay, well, it's obviously Netflix or it's got to be maybe Hulu," but the reality when we talk about consumers and where they're spending their time, the number one competitor for Netflix is going to be YouTube and Twitch in terms of consumption hours. So these are things that we just pay attention to and we're very aware of. And so it's kind of this, well, how do we get more involved in that space? And I've always loved esports and my brother's been playing this whole time. And so I was kind of like, well, guys, there's a weird world here where we could try to actually put together a team and start developing content and try to bring a new level of storytelling and narration to esports. And all the owners play Counter-Strike, and they've played for 15, 20 years now at this point, and so they're always asking me about my brother, and they were always asking me about the events that I would go to in my free time and keeping up with it, and so it was just kind of like a sit down really quickly one day before, it happened really quickly, actually. It was like a conversation at the beginning of January, and then I think by the 2nd week of January, we had a team. So it's just kind of like we had been talking about it for 2 years of like, "Oh, maybe we do a content house. Maybe we should start streaming. Maybe we should do this." And esports just felt like the perfect thing. We all enjoy it. We all watch it. We all play the games. And it's like, okay, well, we've got enough connections in it. We've got enough people doing it. And we think that we have a unique skill set that people aren't utilizing in esports, which is just around narrative and storytelling and content creation, that we really wanted to try to bring that to elevate the level of stuff that's out there for fans and consumers in the space.
So that's very interesting. You gave us a lot to unpack there. The first thing I wanted to touch on was the Ledoux brothers, who are the co-founders and owners of Marsborne. Like you said, they come from the VFX special effects world, but they do have a background in esports. uh, and I believe they work for a company called Crafty Apes, if I'm not mistaken. And I was doing some cursory research when Marsborne first entered the space, and I saw they had done stuff for like Disney, done stuff for Paramount, other big big movie producers. Um, and I did see they are also a Georgia company. As I wanted to ask just what can you give more background like what they do in the entertainment space in particular?
Yeah, so Crafty Apes was actually a company started by Chris, who's one of the brothers. He started it, man, 2015, 2016. My timelines are maybe a little off at this point, but it's primarily just as a VFX house. So what they do is post processing. I like to explain it by okay, if you watch a movie and you see a big fiery explosion or a dragon flying through the sky or someone's acne is cleaned up, that's all VFX. It's all the stuff that goes in taking the shot and getting it to its finest finished polished output for what you guys actually see in the film. So they ran that for 10 years, grew it to 600 plus employees, like 8 offices around the globe. They've worked for everyone from like Netflix, Amazon, most of the Marvel films, a lot of the Disney original productions. So they're basically just a freelance mercenary that all the other companies say, hey, cool, we need our shots to look really good and we need a trusted company who can get it done effectively and within budget. So that's just what they do. And they've been doing that for years. And then they transitioned that to say, okay, VFX is uniquely equipped within the film industry where you see the production all the way from the beginning to the end. Most other people are siloed where they're like, if I'm the director, I'm only really working on the movie for X amount of time, whereas VFX is working on it from the pre-planning all the way to the final output of the film. So they said, cool, we've got thousands of film credits under our belt where we've been on set for thousands of film credits. We could probably know a thing or two that other people don't to start developing tools and effective pipelines to kind of get rid of a lot of the bloat happening in Hollywood that makes it so expensive and hard to make a large scale production.
And with that focus on streamlining your production processes, getting rid of bloat, I'm assuming pursuing like an effective return on investment and ROI. Uh, what factors from that world influence them outside of love for esports to create an esports organization? You mentioned they of course all played Counter Strike when they were younger, played Counter Strike still, play all the newest titles. But what was like the I guess business rationale behind going and saying, okay, now we're going to go in, we're going to create an organization. Clearly, Counter Strike is going to be our focus. How do we get there from, oh, we like esports to we're making an org?
So it's definitely, I think, one of the hardest things for anyone when you want to get into esports is how do you turn this into a legitimate business? What is going to be my financial model here? And we had some conversation with some other org owners before we started the journey, namely like Todd Howard over at Ghost Gaming. And I mean, across the board, you speak to anyone who works in esports or owns a team, and they will tell you this is not a business to make money. There's pretty much no way to see a return on your investment. If you get into esports, you are doing it out of love and passion for it. Now, are there potential revenue models and ways you can activate on things? Yes, but for the most part, no one's getting into this expecting that you're going to print money. For us, part of the film experience and background was the potential for a Moneyball type situation. I mean, if you look at Counter-Strike specifically, it seems very feast or famine, where at the top level, orgs are able to generate a significant amount of revenue, both from obvious things like sticker sales, attendance of majors, club prize promos, but then also things like sponsored deals and activations of their merchandise, things on those lines. But then at the bottom level of esports, it's pretty much no one has funding. And the same is true, I think, for a lot of players, where in Counter Strike at the top ends, you have players who are commanding salaries upwards of well over 6 figures a year. And then when you look at places like North America, outside of a couple teams, there's pretty much no funding, no salaries going around. So you look at that whole thing as a and you go, okay, there's obviously a disconnect happening. What is the main differentiating factor between the large orgs that are able to generate revenue and the small scale orgs that aren't able to see a return on their investment? Why are the players at the top able to command such a high level salary, whereas the players at the bottom kind of are left hoping for a couple $100 a month? And what's going on with all that? And for me, it was similar to with film and getting rid of bloat. There's a big Moneyball situation here where when you really look at it, the talent level that's accessible for players. There's a lot of affordable players with incredible high levels of talent. But when an esports org is looking into acquisitions, they also have to take into account marketability and brand size because that's where a large amount of their potential revenue is going to come from. Can I get sponsors on this player? Will this player bring visibility to my brand as a whole so I can get other sponsors, my YouTube video visibility, or sell merchandise? And so there's like a weird kind of give and take where trying to put together a team that is affordable with the talent level, but also gives you those other benefits or potentialities from a monetization standpoint. Um, for us, it was a fun thought experiment. Can it be done? Is it possible? And then what are some things that we could potentially be doing from a content creation and narrative standpoint that other teams aren't doing, that our unique experience would lend itself well to, that could potentially be a different way of running the business than other people have done from an esports standpoint?
You mentioned, the sort of streamer economy and making players into commodities you can sell, not just for their performance, but for their personality, for their footprint on Twitch, footprint on Twitter, all of that. And it's clear, Marsborne is still a work in progress, as I think things have ramped up a lot quicker than many would have expected with the team. Having gone to LAN and done well, having won the Dust Yes Eagle Master Series by INUI, and having done all those things in a relatively quick fashion. But with that, I think it's clear to see that like the brand and the content is still a work in progress and still in the pipeline. So what things is Marsborne looking for in the future to do as like a brand building exercise to monetize and to commodify the players on the team as well?
Well, as you said, the results that we've seen out of the gate are a lot better than we initially anticipated. When we sat down with this idea, right? The first people we kind of talked to was Minus and Lucid. Lucid being the coach that was going to help us put together and craft these players and give us a realistic expectation of, okay, with this budget, with this timeline in mind, where could we be in 6 months, in a year? And when we initially sat down with this plan, it was like, okay, in a year, we can have a decent team. Maybe we'll have to grind through advance, maybe we'll have to grind through this and then start seeing some results. So coming out of the gate and shooting so hot and starting to see results and then going to LAN and doing so well, it kind of made us go, oh shit, our timeline needs to be a lot quicker. A lot of the things you're talking about, like our pipeline for content creation and things like that, was like, oh, well, we were building things to document the story, but the story's already happening and the story's already unfolding. And so we've kind of had to pivot that a little bit. So now we're starting to do like, okay, we're going to put out our weekly series that is, here's where the team is, here's what's going on with the team, here's updates on it. Start to do some more behind the scenes of showcasing the players as individuals and what their experience is. Because for me, I think that's the most interesting thing about this whole thing is the people behind the controller and the mouse, like what's really going on in Wolfie. Like if you spend a couple hours talking to Wolfie, you realize that he is an incredibly interesting person and you want to watch everything he does. And I think that like hearing the stories and journeys of these players and what they've sacrificed to get where they are and what it takes from them to play at the level they do and to pursue something like this. It's esports is such a intangible thing. It's such a pursuit off into the void of I'm going to venture forth in pursuit of something great in the distance. And it takes a certain mindset of people to do that, and getting to talk to them and document that I think is really interesting and exciting. So we're really ramping up production on that and starting to try to tell more videos. But then there's a lot of things I want to do in terms of I think there's activations that we haven't seen yet in esports. I think it's so weird to me that predominantly the sponsors that we saw for the last 15 years, and I think a reason a lot of these sponsors left is, they'd be like, "Hey, I'm a beef jerky company, and I'm gonna pay you $5,000 a month, and you're gonna tell me that you eat beef jerky in the hopes that my fans will now go buy the same beef jerky." And that feels a little weird to me, a little disingenuous, but there's a lot of things that obviously work in esports, like gambling works really well because there's a direct, user acquisition. Like, I know for a fact that if someone watches me open cases, there's a good chance that that person is then in chance going to go open cases. The same is not true with things like beef jerky or energy drinks. But I think there's other tools, especially in Counter-Strike, like CS2 Lens and other kind of like application tools that people utilize to get better at their performance that we don't quite see good enough activations on. You start to see some affiliate marketing, but I don't see anyone really showcasing the tools and utilizing them and showing how in a team dynamic space, these things can actually improve your performance and give you better results. But there's also other things I'm really interested in just telling stories around that I think people don't get to do a lot of in esports because it's so focused on just what's going on in the server. And I think there's a lot of really cool things about the players outside of the server.
You mentioned these creating the story and creating the brand image behind Marsborne. One thing that's unique with this organization is it's not a revival of an old brand. It's not a continuation of a storied brand. It's something that was completely created bespoke just for this roster, just for this new project that is only a couple months old. What can you tell me about the design of the logo? Why the name Marsborne? Why the why the Roman mythology veneer around it? What went into making this brand, and what's the why behind it?
So a lot of it kind of just boils down to wanting to have some fun with it. There's like a weird give and take in esports at the moment when you look out across the landscape where people either take it way too seriously and corporate, and I think that exists from like the 20 early 2020s when we saw a lot of the rebrandings happen and a lot of private equity come in and start up these firms. Is there was this idea that my brand had to be completely accessible for all people. I couldn't alienate anyone by my messaging, or my brand imagery, or any of that. And it feels very stale and stagnant to me. So we wanted to try to just have some more fun because, like, while we take this very seriously in terms of the execution and trying to achieve with it, it's not that serious. Like, we play video games. Like, we should have fun. There should be some character. There should be uh, some enjoyment to it that isn't so cold. And so for like Marsborne, like a lot of people look at it and they're like, they don't get it initially, and that's fine. But the idea is uh, Mars, the god of war, and born being blessed by and imbued by. So we are warrior spirits imbued by the god of war to go out and conquer and conquest. And that we hail from the planet Mars and have come here to do that. It's just our way of having some fun and try to imbue some more story, but also gives us the ability to try to create some original IP around the esports org. And I think that's something you already are starting to see in larger orgs, but they didn't have the back portion thought out ahead of time. So like when I say that, I say like companies like Liquid now trying to do this stuff with telling the story of legacy and history, and they've been here for 25 years, right? But like Liquid and the horse don't necessarily mean anything. So they have to try to like build a new bridge mascot for it. Um, so it's like Marsborn for us was just a way of trying to have some fun, try to build something that we could have a mythos around and tell some original stories in itself, and then give a way to kind of spice up the splash images, spice up the graphics, just something that's a little more different and interesting.
We saw with that as well. You know, the social media has been a little cheeky. Have seen it particularly on the Twitch channel. You've been in our matches on the Dust to Twitch, for example, like arguing with fans, arguing with Blue Jays, arguing almost sort of like a combative front to the organization. Is that sort of provocativeness part of the brand you want to build?
Yeah, like, when I was at Frag, I was in the front row talking smack the entire time, but every single person there knew that as soon as we were off the server, like, it's all love. I just as a sports fan and an esports fan myself, like, I love that. I love smack talk. I love energy. I love seeing the passion from fans and people rooting on their team and rooting against the other people. And I wanna see more of that in esports. I think Counter-Strike is uniquely equipped for that because as we've seen so many other games try to move away from, like, BM and being negative because they want to be incredibly advertiser friendly. There's no body shots here, there's no teabagging, there's no smack talk. We're all best friends and we all love each other. It's like Counter-Strike is still like, "No, this is for the boys. This is for the adults." Like, we teabag each other, we shoot each other in the body, we talk smack, but, like, outside of the server, I want everyone to succeed. I want the best from everyone. But it's like, yeah, like at LAN, Fragadelphia, like I was trying to get in the Blue Jays players' heads as much as possible from being, okay, I'm in the front row. I'm going to be yelling every chance I can and try to get in their head. But afterwards, I'm going to go shake their hands, tell them great job, and give them high fives. Like it's all love.
Frag was definitely a pivotal moment for Marsborn because they hadn't really done anything up until that point. In ESL Challenger League, you had to use Steel and Beaky for a good amount of time, so that was the first time we really got to see like the full roster. And despite not winning, it was quite good to see that sort of early progress of the roster. Now that we have a land runner up under your belt, we've won the obviously the Eagle Masters and done all these things to close out this interview section, what are we looking to accomplish as the org and as the team as we head into the second half of the year?
Yeah, so we've had some really promising results early on. You know, we're only 4 months into starting off the team, and I'm really proud of how well they're doing. Like you said, getting second at frag so early on was, I think, a shock to most people, including us as an org, going, "Wow," like, because at that point, we'd only been playing with Grizz for a couple weeks. He had always been on the team, but we due to roster restrictions with ECL, we hadn't had the time to really practice as a full five-man squad and work through things. So, coming out the gate and getting second there and now being able to actually win the Dust 2, Eagle Masters, it feels really good. It's a good, I think, testament to where we are and what we're putting together, and really what I think Lucid is doing with the fundamental program he's putting together for our players. Goals for the rest of the year, I think, obviously, as any other team, we got so close to making the major, you know, just falling short during the MRQ. That's the main prize. There's nothing short of that. We got so close and now got that taste in our mouth, and we all want it so bad. I know the players especially, they all felt like that was their chance to, you know, get a testament to legacy, to what they've been working for. Ian, you know, he's been playing for 10 years grinding this out, you know. A lot of the players have their own stories and why, but that's our main goal, is making sure that we qualify for the next MRQ and that we make it through. Outside of that, doubling down on content 100%. We want to get more stories out. We want to get more, we want to let the people get to meet these players more and have more opportunities to engage with them and experience who they are in and out of the server. So whether that's through content creation or more live streams, definitely going to be going to more lands. We had a blast at the last frag, and with the new frag coming up in Canada, I definitely expect we're going to be attending that as well, and just trying to document the whole journey of what it is to start an esports org and go for glory.
For sure. And the first part of that glory, what I keep mentioning incessantly is the fact that you did win the Dustiest Eagle Masters by. Now, here's the thing, right? So, Inouye, So I've been calling it Inouye, and I've been telling everyone, all of our broadcasters, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Inouye. Don't pronounce it wrong. Make the sponsors happy. Do good by the people who are doing good by us. But apparently, it's not Inouye. It's Inui. It's been Inui the whole time. So I didn't know that until like match day number 6 or 7. So I had to go back to our casters and be like, oh yeah, it's Inui, because apparently now, were you a PlayStation or an Xbox guy growing up?
I was actually both.
Wow, someone's parents must have. But anyway,
No, I just didn't buy anything else with any other
you,
grocery money, rent, like any mowing a lawn or delivering papers, every dollar went towards
straight into
games.
Xbox 360. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently there's this cat. Bear with me here. In Japan, Sony has a mascot. It's like called Toro Inui. It's like a little kitty cat that's like, you know how like Japan's really big into like mascot culture. It's like a gray
Yeah.
cat that sort of dances around and it makes funny faces. And the people who made Inui really liked that cat, so they decided to name their matchmaking platform after the cat. And I unfortunately we're still working on getting our screen share and stuff all set up for this podcast. You can expect to see that soon. But if you look into it, its name is, I believe, Toro Inui, or Inui Toro, depending on how Japanese names work. Apparently it's like the cat's like fun, he's friendly, he's approachable, he's a gaming mascot. So like, oh, that's what we want for our platform, to be like fun, approachable, a little like, because if you look at the internet platform, they have their little mascot, who's a guy wearing like a hood. He has a little assault
Yeah.
rifle and he jumps out of things, and I think that's kind of like what they're trying to accomplish with their brand. Um, and so yeah, there you go. Not Inui, it's Inui, and so I
Inui.
had Inui. It's Japanese, so it doesn't really roll off the tongue naturally. And that's like, I don't know if you could tell viewers, or you as well, Matt, is during the intro I was like Inui, but moving on beyond that, going to their first event in North America, the Dust US Eagle Master Series 1, powered by Inui. We saw Marsborne top that event and take home $5,000 for your trouble. That's going to be our first section on our news portion of this podcast. Um, to start, we saw the team struggle a little bit in the group stage. I want to get your thoughts on that. The team emerged out in round 5 with a 3-2 record, first beating the Peruvians of Lobo Army, and then you lost to a kind of unexpected mixed team in Daku. And I know there's a lot of chatter online about that, about these Swedish newcomers, Dottie and Mnmzzz, who kind of just appeared on the scene. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, It's always weird, right, when you're going up against teams that you don't have a lot of information on, because one side of the coin is from a layman, you go, "Oh, well, unheard of team, this should be a no-brainer. There's no reason we should even struggle against them." But I think most people in Counter-Strike know that the less information you have on a team, the more potential struggle you're gonna have because you can't prepare for them. You don't know how they're gonna play, and you kinda have to treat it like a scrim, and that can go 50-50. It's really anyone's shot, and I mean, Mnmzzz and Dottie are really impressive. I think he goes by Maggie now or
Well,
Magi.
it's weird, right? Because so for those who don't know, Dottie is like a Swedish journeyman player. He was like apparently he's older than you would think for being like relatively new because he was playing in like 2017, and then he got a ban on Facebook for cheating. From 2018 to 2020, and then he played as Maggie from like 2020 to 2024. But then he wants to go back to being Dottie from here on out. So it's a little tough, right? Because on HLTV for a while it was Maggie, but on Wikipedia it was Dottie. But then on our broadcast it was Maggie, but then the team would call him Dottie. So it's kind of a whole. So whatever you want to do, but I think Dottie's kind of the wisdom moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, would I like to believe there's a world in which a young player can be doing really well, uh, can cheat, can make some bad decisions, can get banned for them, and then can reform and spend that time getting better and improving and coming back and doing it legitimately. I love that story. To me, that could be really cool. Um, I don't know what's happening. Obviously, I have no insight, but they've been playing really, really well. Uh, Maggie and Mnmzzz have both been playing incredibly well. I know going against them when we faced them again on Nouns, and I saw that Nouns had picked them up, my immediate shot was, "Oh, fuck." Like, I'm kind of scared to go up against this now, um, just because that same thing is they're incredibly talented players on server, but we don't know anything about how they play, so you can't really prepare for them, and I gotta say, their ability to make incredible rotates. It's a very scary thing to play against.
Right, definitely. And so for those who weren't, were following along or need a quick refresher, when the smoke cleared in the group stage, in the Swiss stage rather, we saw Getting Info, Blue Jays, Bad News Capybaras, Nouns, Daku, Marsborne, Super Evil Gang, and Fisher College make it through. And of course, as luck or maybe unluck would have it, you end up having to face Daku again in the first round of playoffs in the quarterfinals, where you end up taking them down 2-1. Was it a relief for you guys to you're like, oh shit, we're playing these guys again. People say like it's too good to be true. This guy's putting up way too good numbers that like actually go on and take him down.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not let the rumor mills on Twitter influence your thought process. So as much as you go into a game and you wanna give everyone the benefit of a doubt and, like, I don't wanna point fingers on anyone and say like, "Oh, this player's cheating," right? But, like, if you go on Twitter and, like, all you see for days is clips of someone, like, that weighs into your brain when you go to play against that person. Whether or not they're cheating, your brain is gonna be thinking, "Oh, there's a chance that they're gonna be cheating because 'cause I've seen these clips on Twitter." And, of course, that gives you some fear going into that because, like, how do you beat a DMA? You don't. Uh, you beat a DMA with your own DMA, right? It's like, that's not something we wanna do. So it's definitely felt a sigh of relief beating them. Incredibly close games. Like I said, once again, they're playing well. So to overcome them and then be facing the 2 guys from them again in Nouns 2 days later, I was like, "We can't escape these guys. They are curses. They are determined to, cut short our runs and opportunities." Um, but Fisher College as well, being who we had to face right after Daku. Fisher College took us down recently, and, I mean, incredible performances from them. I think they're another program that people are kind of not paying a lot of attention to and not seeing the caliber of players that they're putting up.
There, you touched on two interesting topics that I don't even have on our little run of show, but I want to get your thoughts on them. You mentioned the prevalence of of DMA cheats. Obviously, it must be prevalent enough if you only having recently come into esports again is immediately aware of the presence of DMA. And for those who don't know, DMA I believe stands for direct memory access cheats. They're cheats. You see them often if you see some spam on like the Dusty Twitter account or other Twitter accounts. People will be selling them in our replies. They're little PCIe cards, like graphics cards, you just stick into your computer. And according to the people who are selling them, they're completely undetectable. And whether or not we don't, there's no way to know how prevalent they are. But we have, tons of accusations constantly flying on Face It. It's an everyday topic on Face It, which is, the Face It matchmaking platform. People are always saying that people. I mean, just to be explicit, when Slump came in last year with Fluffy Amers, people said he cheats. When LFO4 has Nightblade, people think people have thrown accusations towards him. Every day there's a new player being accused.
Yeah.
Being accused on Face It. There's people being banned on Face It almost every day. And there's almost like this environment of suspicion, of cynicism, of a lack of integrity. And it's as much as I've commented on it as well. It's really hard because you want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and you want to say, oh, casual normie fans are like, oh, CS2 is full of cheaters. And you're like, no, guys, it's not full of cheaters. But when all this is happening at the same time, it's really hard to go and be like, no, it's clean. We're playing a clean sport. As an org, is that like, are you like, how would you rate like your level of almost like Stalin paranoia? Are you like running great purges in your mind? Are you like, this guy's got to go? Like, what's the headspace you're in?
Well,
with like the state of cheating in Counter-Strike 2 right now, especially in the semi-pro esports scene.
I mean, not just the DMA, but a large amount of the, we'll call it competitive integrity issues within Counter-Strike over the years were a large point of contention between me and the investors, and things for us to discuss of how do you, when you're signing players, how do you fully vet those players? How do you fully vet those players if they've made mistakes in the past that they've reformed now and that now they're not going to do those things? How do you ensure contractually that they aren't incentivized to cheat or do things? Because it's not just DMA. It's, I mean, within Counter-Strike, obviously, currently there's a lot of issues or a lot of discourse around DMA. But in the past, we've had a lot of discourse around match fixing and a lot of discourse around betting integrity and people in the middle of their match placing bets against themselves and then match fixing. So Counter-Strike just, it's mired in controversy, unfortunately. And I think a lot of it, as you were saying, is the community likes to blow things out of proportion. So how much of it is actually happening? Is it 10% of the time or is it 40% of the time? Because if you go online and you engage in the Twitter discourse or Reddit discourse, they're going to tell you that 40% of the teams in like Challenger and in especially like over in Europe, Challenger and in Academy and stuff, they're cheating. They're going to tell you 40% of the teams are cheating. And if you log in and play Premier and you go and Face It at the top, 30, 40, 50%, everyone's cheating. How much of that is actually happening? I don't think it's probably that widespread, but it definitely exists. And match fixing is definitely happening now in the leagues we're in. You occasionally hear rumors of like a leaked Discord coming out. I've heard players talk to me about some of these discords that exist where people discuss match fixing and being paid to throw. And so I don't know how prevalent it is, if it really is this widespread issue. I know people like to talk about it as if it is, but it's definitely something on our radar and something that I think you have to consider when you're investing. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is, right? It's a business. It's an investment that we're hoping to see a return on the investment. And so if you're throwing that investment into something that could be potentially scandalized, or especially in Counter-Strike with match fixing, it's like your org can no longer play in this space ever again because of the behaviors of your players. And so those are things that you have to weigh into consideration very heavily when it is, I'm letting these people represent me, but these people potentially could stop me from ever being in this space again. Like let's say it was found that Minus and Lucid were match fixing, right, for Marsborne, and they had been doing
Folks, they're not, by the way. Just
they are not.
You remember when you're doing a podcast, and this is some free advice for you. You got to tailor your content towards like the lowest common denominator of thinker, and you got to make sure they can't pull any sound bites out, because then you end up on ours like a little offensive.
People will clip us.
Cashmere says Minus and Lucid are cheating. ... And then so you got to be like, well, hold on, theoretical.
Let me rephrase. Theoretically,
if they were cheating in a video game in Minecraft,
that were cheating, if we had players representing us who happened to cheat,
that's the one.
We as an organization would be banned from competing, despite the fact that we could just switch out those players. So you have to consider that as an org, is like, there's bigger repercussions than just my players don't do well. There is, my org is now dead in the water because of this. And I mean, we obviously saw that with iBuyPower years ago.
speaking of years ago, so you mentioned the brothers, the Ledoux brothers. So for those, there's four of them. As far as I'm aware, there might be more running around, but four relevant esports brothers. They were just fans of Counter Strike, I believe. So what was it like for them to start getting involved in esports and like peel back the wallpaper and realize like there's all this like disgusting stuff? Because I'm sure they probably like tuned into your your majors, your Cologne, your Katowices. Were they aware of like the systemic issues in in Counter Strike once they started realizing like, oh, we're going to invest into it?
At varying levels, like some of the brothers are more casual consumers. One of the brothers is more diehard, pays attention, has been to events, things like that. So it's like it was definitely a learning experience of, okay, we're starting to get into this. We're hearing that this has happened. And it definitely came up right away because when we initially took over the Undone roster and we're playing in ECL, we had Steel on our roster playing and Steel obviously had that history with iBuyPower. So it very quickly became a point where, two of the owners were like, oh, what do you mean? What is that? How did that happen? Oh, does that still happen? Oh, hang on. And the next thing you know,
And
they're
the answer
they're
is like
getting
yes,
rated.
emphatically yes, it is still happening
And
quite
then the next thing is,
quite frequently actually.
they're
Yeah.
on the YouTube rabbit hole. And I think it was like a couple years ago where it was like 30 teams being investigated for match fixing right now. And it was like, he was like, hang on, this is in 2020. All these teams still play. So it was like, there was definitely a lot of, okay, you start seeing the rumor mills and you start going, hang on, maybe we shouldn't do this. What are we doing?
And it's clearly the other side of the argument. Argument one. Now, getting back into the event itself, we do see So you did play that really competitive series against Fisher College, and then you faced up against Nouns. And I know for a fact that you were watching that match. You were in the chat. I could see you on the Marsborne official Marsborne official account, and ultimately come out on top. Uh, I'm sure you've heard a lot of things from your from your players about the overall experience of winning their first event, doing it on a new platform, and all that. What are your big one? What are your big takeaways from winning this event? And two, how's your players' experience been with the INUI platform? Any insight you could give on that? I know a lot of we're very blessed that a lot of players have just been like, oh, create an account, sure, whatever. I'd love to earn some money, but we've had some people who are a bit more skeptical about giving information to a new platform and getting into that. So, winning the event and then thoughts on the platform in general.
So winning the event for me felt great because as you said, like I watch every single one of our games. I can't be peeled away. And we've had so many matches where we've gotten so close to tasting, victory. And we're a team that likes to get in our own way. We love to choke a lead. We love to drop a match that we shouldn't. We love to lose rounds that are in the bag. And so seeing us finally close it out, it felt like, okay, cool. The system is working. The coaching is working. We're getting better. We're fixing our mistakes and our behaviors and improving. So for me, it was a great milestone and testament to kind of like the last couple of months. We've been a team that does well, people are impressed by, but can we go the distance? And this was the first time where I can say, yes, we can go the distance, especially even against teams that maybe had bested us earlier in the series. We can improve and come back and be the better team when we need to be. So that felt good. And I know all the players too, very similar feelings of just like, cool, we can do it. We have a 5-man squad that can actually go the distance, that can close out tournaments, that can win stuff, and not just a team that can show up and get sent home kind of early, which has happened to us a couple times. And it's disheartening when you sign up for a tournament and you don't make it past day 2. You're like, all right, GG's. And then as far as the platform itself, I mean, I think there's a lot of, as I'm sure you're
No,
aware,
and I mean, be candid. It's we're not,
yeah,
it's the Dust US podcast brought to you by INUI, but it's not like, I need to like, everything.
No,
Learning
I think
experience
it
for all
went
of us.
incredibly smooth, especially when you look at the landscape of platforms out there. There's so many nowadays vying for your sign up and your data, like you said, and it does become kind of a different ask every new week on the player to say, okay, cool, here's the umpteenth platform that we need you to sign up for. And I know throughout the year there's been a couple that we have had less than favorable experiences with, where you're trying to go back and forth with support even just to get your account set up, or how do I connect my team with my account? And none of those issues happen with this. So that is in itself a good sign of how the platform is doing, that my players who are not the best at tech, despite being gamers, could make their own account within 10 minutes and be good to go.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, would you say you're like a pretty like techie guy?
Yeah.
Could you build like a PC from how like let's say like you have a computer, right? Folks, computers, we know them. So like let's say you buy a new computer, like your GPU, your motherboard, all the shit out of a box. Like how long would it take you to like what's like the like
It's
good
a
like
good day project.
but like you wouldn't like cry or like break or like bend the pins or anything, you don't think?
So caveat, there will be some moments when that RAM stick just doesn't wanna do the thing it's supposed to do so easily, and I probably will get a little frustrated, and there will be it's like IKEA furniture, it's like, will I get pissed while building it? Yes. Will it get done perfectly? Yes.
I bought a second monitor recently, and while I was doing like the cable management behind it, I have an IKEA desk, and I found like a loose nut from it that had fallen out somewhere, and I'm just like, well, that's going to become a problem for future Jeff, because I'm sure that's like the load bearing screw that makes it all come together. But it's like you said, like it's kind of crazy sometimes like how tech illiterate players are because they're so hyper focused on like on the CS side that they don't know how to like a big issue we ran into was trying to get players to this understanding on the platform of if you have if you have an issue on a website, what's the first thing you try?
Tech support or going to the docs. I go to the
Like let's say like
docs.
something won't load. Like what's your first like port of call? Okay, so like I would probably like refresh the page.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like refresh the page, right? Like naturally, that was a big thing we had to teach the players at this event was if something's like not loading, like if your ready up button isn't, if the CSS element isn't loading, or you've done a roster change, you need to reflect on the platform, or like a start times changed, just hit the refresh, and that's like something we had to extensively like drill into players' head is like hit refresh, and that's like it's really interesting. I think because like Face It as well as like so baby proof
Yeah.
in a way because it's they've had so much dev time on making it like baby proof, even though maybe it doesn't have some of the features they want. Uh, I think there's just like a lack of like natural curiosity as well when it comes to like a new platform, like trying to really get in there and like understand like how it's going to work. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think so far like we've definitely. I'm not going to come out here and say there's been like no issues with it. Like it's in beta for a reason. There's an update push like every day for a reason. But like it's been good working with their team so far. They've given us a lot of like respect when it's come to feedback with like what needs to change. What can we do better? What are players reporting to us? And especially I think like having players like attack. I think part of the reason too is like having they're doing this all is like the more players of differing of levels you can have get on this platform and try to break it, the more you can come back and be like, okay, this is what we need to fix in the next dev patch. Come back and fix in the next dev patch because
Yeah,
players
like, do a
players
real
have found
stress test.
players have found ways like going, especially during the open qualifiers when we had like 100 plus, when we had 100 plus players coming on at once. They broke like the website in ways where they would like DM me on like Discord or whatever, and then I would go to the devs. And I'd be like, "Hey, this is like what happened," and the response would just be like question mark because it's like they found ways to break the website and like wait, like they tell like a little like there was one time when a team they like their coach like left the roster, but he didn't designate a successor before like showing before leaving. So the team just didn't have a captain, so they couldn't do the vetoes because they never imagined a person would just like disappear from the roster like in the middle of the tournament. And so
Yeah,
yeah, it's because they when I feel like I don't know if this is similar like in the VFX world and your sort of side of things, like you never there's certain like use cases you never expect, like when you're building out something you never expect to like happen, and then it just happens, and when then user gets their hands on it, it just happens.
Oh, yeah, and speaking of, like, players being not tech literate despite, the assumption they would be, it's like we sent all of our players, like, cameras and recording equipment so we could do this whole, documenting the
Right.
journey, and it's just like getting a player up to date on how to turn on the camera and put a memory card, which is like you said, it's like it's something like refreshing the page where it's like in my brain, I don't even think, "Oh, well, I would refresh the page because that would have happened naturally." It's like there's certain tech functionalities that I'm like, "Okay, you start recording by pressing the red button on the top that says record." And they were like, "Oh,
Oh,
okay, that's how I start
like
recording." And I'm like,
obviously, like duh, like but then there also does like it's like an IGL will be like really really good at like coming with new strats and anti-stratting and stuff, and then it's like green, you press the on button to turn it on, and they're like
Yeah, he's
like
talking about how we counter the mentality of the opposing team based on psychology, and then he's like, "All right, how do I turn this on?" I'm like, "Is this the same dude?"
it's like
They're all idiot savants. I swear. Everyone who's a
nice.
pro gamer is just like an idiot savant, and I mean that in the nicest way possible.
There's the rare ones though. Like I don't know if this is like if this is old enough or if this is new enough for you to. Do you know the player Yay?
Yeah.
Like he's big in Valorant now, but before that he was pretty cool in CS. Apparently, like the lore behind Ye is he's like the only guy who's like really good at everything, like really good at everything with tech. So like at lands he'd be like helping the admins like fix his teammates' problem, like oh you got to make sure like the RAM the graphics card, oh you got to make sure the driver is updated and like and like he's like oh your config, you need to change this in your config to make sure you have optimal performance. And it's like there's a couple guys like that who know like how the sausage is made in Counter Strike. There's other guys who just they launch the game and they just do whatever someone tells them on Reddit with their config, and then they get like
Yeah.
10 FPS and they're like, why is this happening to me? But yeah, I guess that's just kind of part of. I guess it's like basketball players probably don't know how to. I mean, do all of them know how to tie their shoes? Probably, but
How
you
many
never
of them
know.
could reinstall a net? You know, I think that's probably akin is like how many basketball players could put up the net if the net came down? It's like it seems pretty easy. You could probably figure it out, but I bet you there's a couple who would look at it and be like, I have no clue, man.
Is that of my skill set? Yeah. And I think this has come into special focus now because I just can't. I think the tech issues is like on my brain right now because I just came back from Frag Vegas, which I don't know if you heard, had its fair share of tech problems, which we're hoping won't be
Yeah.
the case when we head to the next Frag, which you mentioned is going to be at Frag 19 in Windsor, Canada, at St. Clair College's esports arena. That's our next topic of our news. Is the next Frag is going to be the first time that Venerable Tio has ever gone to Canada. Uh, without any prior coaching, what do you think about going to Canada?
One, I'm excited to go to Canada. Two, I'm really excited for the growth of Frag in itself. They've obviously been a mainstay in North America for land representation, and seeing them kind of now be able to emerge outside of the United States and move into Canada, I'm looking forward to. I think the NA just needs more of that. It's like I would love to see more companies besides Frag step into the space and start to do some lands as well. Just because from a community standpoint, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like being able to show up in person and meet all your online friends and play games and like really see who's the best. Plus, there's no DMAs on LAN, so I think we need more LANs.
I think part of it too is like when your squad went to the block, it was all NA. It was all NA teams running the gamut from open to advanced to ECL to pro. But when your team won Frag, they went from an irrelevant position in the Valve regional standings, the VRS. They went from being nobodies to being relevant enough to get invite to the MRQ. And I think a lot of European squads and South American squads looked at it and they're like, "What the hell? I can go to an NA LAN, kick the shit out of Jimmy's Money Crew and Boy Kissers or whatever, and then go and get enough VRS points to make the major." So we definitely saw that at Vegas, where it's like we had Nip attend, we had Sharks from Brazil, we had Game Hunters from Brazil, we had other European squads that wanted to attend and unfortunately couldn't make it. Do you think maybe Canada's intentional move on Frag to sort of court people with easier visas in this age of visa restrictions?
I definitely think so. Like, I think it makes sense from a business standpoint because, as you're saying, all these other regions need land representation as well. They don't quite have it, and it's a lot easier to fly into Canada sometimes than it is to fly into the United States. So I feel like hosting it there makes it more accessible for a lot of the European countries, but especially the South American countries. And it'll be interesting to see if we start having South American lands as well, that you have American or North American and European teams start flying to. Because historically, we haven't really seen like American teams say go over to Europe for lands outside of like complexity and liquid. So I think it'll be cool to see more. I just want more grassroots. Like I just want more of that. There's something about, like you said, going to Frag and it's all the teams. It's not just the top dogs and like the teams that people are expecting. It's the opens and the academy rosters and the group of 5 guys who just like to play. It's like there's something about going to a LAN and experiencing that.
For sure, and I at Philadelphia at the block, which you were at, the one team, the ESC Advanced Squad, wanted Goons. They made a top eight finish, and I was really impressed by them. I mean, they played, they took a map off you guys and they forced double overtime or single overtime, no double overtime even, almost eliminating you. And I know that was, I don't know if you remember, I was running back and forth between the Marsborne station and the Wanted Goon station on
Yeah.
opposite sides of the venue because I was like, oh, Wanted Goon's gonna get this big upset. I better get this for Twitter. I'm like, oh, but Marsborne are coming back. I better get this for Twitter. And it's like, no, I don't think anyone would have expected that team to take your team, even though you weren't proven at the time. You still have good, still good players on your team to take that to limit. I think that's like one of the most exciting things about, local lands. These kind of teams just come out of nowhere and they really impress off the basis of that.
Yeah, I think in general that speaks to the larger I think what's happening in North American Counter-Strike is that the talent pool is significantly higher than people expect or are paying attention to, and I think that's, like, my biggest issue with so much of the discourse on Twitch, during these matches, is it's a lot of the people who don't really pay attention to the North American scene coming over and being like, "Oh, this is a tier 9 team." And it's like, well, no, like, if you've been watching the performance of these guys for the last 6 months, it's like they've been showing steady improvements. They've been consistently, outperforming what you're expecting they should be. It's just no one I think outside of maybe 3, 4 teams in North America, the grander Counter-Strike space just doesn't really pay attention to what's going on over here.
The Twitch viewers really, because I'm not like a big Twitch guy. Like I don't watch a ton of Twitch. I'll watch matches, of course, but I'm full screening it up. I'm not paying attention to the chat or anything like that. I'll usually have like maybe Discord open on another tab. But this tournament's really kind of made me because I've been the mod for all these channels for this. And I'm like, these people are just scumbags. Like, because it's like Marsborne loses around, they're like, they're fixing. Like then Nouns will win around, they're like, oh well now then then you'll win around, they're like, oh well Nouns is clearly fixing now, and then people are like, the worst part too is I'm sure you saw this. People are like, how many headshots did Peeping get? How many flashbangs did fucking Modem throw? And it's just like these people are just obnoxious. Like unfortunately, the betters are like the lifeblood of our community because they're the people who are they're the only people who are pushing money into
Yeah,
the scene right now.
that's the only funding.
But they're just like the worst. Like it's like, can you guys just like shut the hell up? Because it's like the Twitch chat's just all, and then the people speaking in Russian too, and then you're like, oh hey guys, don't want to be a dick or anything, but can we keep it English? I don't speak Russian, and then they're like, fuck you, gringo, like fuck
Yeah,
you, Amerikansky, like.
it is funny to me that it's like, okay, if you're gambling on Counter-Strike and you're gambling on headshots a player should have, then you should have enough knowledge to know how to check how many headshots that player has, because the solution is not going into the Twitch chat and asking someone, because also none of them can see it either. There is not a scoreboard during the Twitch chat that says Grizz has 7 headshots.
Well, in their innocent, I guess, better minds, I guess I like the cast was like, all right, everyone, stop. All right, this guy's asked me, hit tab,
Yeah,
like
right.
see his headshot percentage, and then don't worry, I'll put in my calculator. Okay, Wolfie has 12 kills and he has a 46% headshot rate. So if you multiply 12 by 0.46, it's like 4.32, and the person's like, thanks, like. On one hand, it's like some people take like a really hard line stance on their Twitch chat. Some of our great community streamers we had for this event are like on their Twitch channels. It's like no betting discussion, you're banned. But it's like for me, it's like okay, on like one hand, yes, but it's like I'm not like if they're annoying, I'll ban them. But it's still like it's still discourse about like the game that's going on. At least they're like engaged.
Yeah,
Sometimes
like I talk to the betters in our Twitch chat, like when we cast our matches, or like even sometimes like I'll comment and engage the betters when they're like, "Oh, Grizz hit on headshots." I'm like, "Oh, congrats!" Right?
right.
Because like I'm 32, I'm an adult, I've been to the casino. I'm not an avid gambler. I'm not a degen by any means, but I'm a responsible adult who once a year likes to gamble a little bit. So I cannot be uh
A prude about it, like
yeah, I'm
yeah.
not gonna villainize someone for coming in there and asking about headshots and stuff, but
Like
yes,
they're
it does.
annoying, but they're not like bad. Most of the time, they're like not like bad people or anything. Like
Yeah, like, do I think that some of the betting stuff is a little predatory on younger children? Yes, but do I have an issue with consenting adults gambling? And do I have an issue with teams being funded by consenting gambling? No, not at all. I have no issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've played the ponies. I've bet on the horses before. I've gone
Yeah,
to
you
Vegas.
know?
I played some roulette, played some blackjack. They do in a weird way become like your most loyal viewers. Like we had one guy who was like watching every single game. I'm sure he was losing like lots of money too over it. But like it's like hey, it's this guy again. Like hey, how's the gambling
I
going
hate to
today?
say it,
Like
but you know who's bought more of our merch so far is the gamblers who are in our Twitch chats.
oh
Like,
yeah,
more of our merch has been sold to people who are active gamblers engaging in our Twitch than has been sold to just people who are like, "Oh, we like you."
they're like oh if Modem hits, I'll buy a hat. And you're like great,
It's
thanks.
literally stuff like that where, like, I'll get a someone bought the other day, they bought the supply package with the hat, the shirt, and the hoodie, and their comment when they bought it was, "Hit big on you guys tonight. Thanks so much." And I was like, I'm cool with it, man."
It's like this is like the platonic ideal of gambling from like the big from the big esports companies. Like this is like what Team Liquid and stuff are looking forward to instead of like the death threats their players usually get. They're like, oh, the betters will spend the money and then they'll engage with our sponsor like Prize Picks or whatever. And then when they win the money on Prize Picks, they'll use it to buy our merch and then they'll buy like the beef jerky sticks too. And it's like I guess on a micro scale, like it is happening with sometimes.
It's definitely more of the death threats, though,
It's definitely more
for
of the death threats
for
though.
every one merch I've sold to a gambler, I've gotten, 12 messages that are like,
Yeah.
"Tell your brother to kill himself." I'm like,
All
all
right.
right, dude."
Thanks for visiting. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So moving on to our next topic on our little rundown of the best of five. For those who don't know, it's a best of five. So you have five news topics. I don't know if I was clear on that one. Speaking of the players who have made you shit your pants, we did see the Nouns lineup recently leave their organization after funding dried up, and now they have become a team called Moneyball. With a lineup consisting of Junior, Cryptic, Clasia, Mnmzzz, and Maggie slash Dottie, combining the Nouns guys who you faced in the finals with two of your most, I guess, fearful, opponents. What's your thoughts on that roster?
I think that roster is gonna be really strong. It's really unfortunate Noun's not getting funding. They've been a great team. They've done a lot to like, the community has gotten behind them as much as any other team in NA, from, like, a grassroots support kind of standpoint. So it's unfortunate that players of that caliber weren't able to secure funding and continue on. This new squad being put together, though, the Moneyball team, I think they're gonna be incredibly talented. I think we're gonna see a lot out of them. If, uh if Magi and Mnmzzz are the real deal, as I would like to believe they are, I think that's going to be a very promising team. We're starting to see a lot more people come out of Sweden, come over to NA and do really well. So that's kind of also cool. Obviously, I'm partial because we have Wolfie. But then speaking about Fisher College earlier, they also, who was it, Thor, that they brought over from
Thor from
Sweden.
Iceland, and then they have
Ison.
Alex from Sweden. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool to see more of that kind of representation coming over here. But I am scared of Moneyball. I think they're gonna be I think they're gonna put a lot of people on notice.
Do you have any secret? Because I know a bit about Mnmzzz and Dottie, but has Wolfie given you like any of the secret sauce in these guys? Like any primeval Swedish knowledge you can drop about them?
No, no, but it does seem that everyone in Sweden knows each other or knows someone who knows each other. I swear they're all from one small village over there. So he seems to know people who know some things, but how that relates to us being able to best them in competition, I do not know.
It's still in development. Yeah,
Yeah.
I it's the same thing with that. You mentioned Thor from Iceland, and I was talking to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, like everyone knows each other." I'm like, "Well, no shit," because the entire country of Iceland is like a few 100,000 people, and so it's like, "Oh yeah, we all live in Reykjavik, and we all play each other, and we've all
Yeah.
played on the same teams and played against each other." Same situation there with the Mongolian guys. It's like 50% of Mongolians live in Ulaanbaatar, that one city, the one city in Mongolia, and so like they all play at the same like LAN cafe. They all like know each other pretty well. And speaking of Mongols, we're gonna have just straight into our next topic. We have IEM Dallas coming up less than 2 weeks from now, which we'll see 16 teams compete in what is essentially going to be a teaser for the major. What are your taking a look at the teams? For those who don't know, we have G2, Vitality, FaZe, Aurora, who were previously Eternal Fire, Mouse Sports, Liquid, Furia, Mongols, Falcons. We have that weird BC game esports roster: 3D Max, Gamer Legion, Heroic, NRG, Legacy, and Lin Vision. What are your initial reactions to things popping up over there about to kick off over in Dallas?
Yeah, like Team Vitality has obviously been on such a dominant run. I'm expecting they're going to be trying to continue that. I don't know if they're going to get a lot of pushback. Like the Team Falcons has been trying to kind of stand in their way, but I'm kind of expecting to see a lot of what we've been watching, which is a finals of Falcons and Vitality, with Vitality closing it out. I'm looking forward to seeing FaZe with the switches that they just did, bringing over Simple for Brokey's bench. So, but in terms of their performance, like I don't know if that's going to be the thing that gets them to that next stage and allows them to close it in. Uh, they just feel kind of too far of a gap
It's
between
weird,
them.
and well, the thing too is I don't know if you saw. There's a chance Rain won't be able to make it either because he
Visa, right?
is no his wife is expecting
That's right.
their second child. So there's a chance Skulls, formerly of Furia, formerly of Liquid, might step in. So that means the team's going to head into Dallas with two new players, and it's like that's just a mess. Like Kerrigan's done fantastic work with stand-ins in the past, but it's like that just feels like a bridge too far for me.
No, like going into an event of that caliber with stand-ins or trying to accommodate on the fly, it's like cutting off one of your arms before you go into battle and saying like, "Cool, I should be fine with my one right arm." It's like realistically, two would have been a lot better. Um, but I feel like that's the nature of esports, right? Is like you get the chance and you go, "Cool, let me try some drastic Hail Mary to see if this will be the piece that I need to actually close the distance." Because that's what this is, right? It's like if you're going to an event of this caliber and you're gonna get 15th, um, and you try to do something drastic, and that drastic change results in you getting 16th, it wasn't really that big of a deal. It's worth the effort of trying to do that Hail Mary that will get you 8th, ninth, you know?
For sure. I mean, obviously, everyone like wants Simple to come back and be the phenom he was in CS:GO, but
Would love to see it.
it's such a gamble to try to have this player who's had his issues, who hasn't really played Counter Strike 2, who's playing a new role, who's doing all this stuff, to hang out in Barcelona to come back and like be a tier 1 player again, and then you have the skulls factor, and it's just like it's kind of crazy when you really
No, and the
try to
caliber of young
conceptualize it.
talent that he's gonna be going up against, it's like you said, it's like everyone would love to see him suddenly flip a switch and be the dominant force he was in Go, but I don't know if he has it in him at this point. It seems like the young competition is just getting harder and harder on 2, and so to have I just don't know if I expect, something drastic like that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What all I think what our eyes are, especially my attention, is going to be on is how Liquid and Energy are going to perform in Dallas as our sole NA reps. Now, I will quick sidebar is I know IEM Dallas 2024 last year was like a miserable experience for me because we go to these lands with the expectation we're going to be interviewing NA players, we're going to be following their journey, and that's what our readers at Dust2S are kind of looking out for. And then last year, M80 and Complexity were the two NA reps, and they both got eliminated day one. And so within like the span of like 6 hours, I was like, oh, there's no more NA teams. Unfortunately, that time around, we had Stewie 2K there who went and won the whole thing with G2. So that was like a storyline, an NA storyline we could cover the whole time. But that's kind of what I'm hoping to avoid. Avoid this time having our two NA hopefuls just bomb out. What are you thinking about Liquid and Energy's chances this time around?
I obviously have a lot of experience going against NRG. Recently, we've been playing them a ton, and there was a point in time early on in the series, and by series I just mean like the 4 months of playing back and forth, right? That I was like, "Oh, like NRG is kind of falling off. NRG is kind of falling off." But the last month and a half, they've turned it around. Bro, especially, has been playing insane. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them show up at this. I think NRG is a team that a lot of people kind of count out in NA, they consider to be a good team, but in the grander world stage, they don't really consider NRG being able to go the distance. I would love to see that proven false. I would love to see NRG actually go really far. And I think there's a lot of teams that they have a good chance against.
Definitely. I think this is their time to do it as well. I mean, they've hit their stride, like you said, very recently, winning the NA Revival Series. They played a very competitive series against NIP at Frag. They just qualified to their first major in 6 years. OC's looking to be back in form after being, out in the wilderness for, 2.5, 3 years. And it's really their time. I think it's really their time to do it because you could see a world in which they get like a team like, Legacy or Lynn Vision in their opener, BC game with Perfecto sitting in for Jacob. And you could see them winning those series easily. I
Yeah,
mean,
very
even,
much.
Heroic because they know, Sun Pius and Saw are supposedly going to G2. G2 has Hades as a stand in, FaZe will have two stand ins. Um, there's all these, asterisks with a lot of these teams, like we always have when we have an NA land because of visas, and that's kind of where I'm hoping they can, do something. I think we're both pretty bullish on their potential to, stand out. What do you think about Liquid? I don't know. For me personally, like I'm kind of at the point with Liquid where it's like they don't have a real coach right now. They just added Shui. Um, I I used to be a huge Liquid fan back like when they had Stewie and when they had Nitro and Elige, like everyone was back in
Yeah.
2018, 2019. But I've been kind of getting sick of Liquid recently. How are you feeling about Liquid?
I'll be honest, like I hardly follow Liquid at all now, and I feel like similar sentiments to you. Like there was a point in time where Liquid was maybe my favorite org in all of esports across the board. I followed them very heavily in Smash Brothers and Street Fighter. They had incredible teams across the board, and it's like, but recently, and especially in Counter Strike, it's just kind of like they do okay, but there's nothing there for me, if that makes sense. Like, there's not a standout player that draws me to want to follow them. They're not really an NA org that much anymore. So, like, I'm not brought to them by the storyline of, like, I'm an American and want the American team to win. Um, so it's like I think they'll do well. I think they'll probably end up middle of the pack. I think no one will talk about their games. I hate to say that, right? Like, but I just don't expect any headlines from Liquid during IEM. I don't expect anyone to be like, "Wow, Liquid did this or Liquid did that," one way or the other. It's
Yeah,
just kind of a team that I feel like a lot of people are just like, they're an esports namestay. They're a household name in gaming, but they're not that exciting anymore.
I think I'm with you on that. It's like because when they make these roster moves, I'm always like, oh yeah, that's a good roster move. They added Nerds. I'm like, hey, that's a good move on paper. They added Shui. I'm like, hey, that's a good move on paper as well. But it never translates into like a particularly spectacular run or something that like, really excites me from like a personality standpoint. I almost feel like this team, like other than Twist, it's a very quiet team. Like no one's a big personality, at least from what I've seen recently. There's no really like emotional core. And if you look at their results as well, you're like they're just a super middle of the pack team. They 9th through 12th at Katowice, 5th through 8th at Pro League, 9th through 12th at Blast, 15th through 16th at
Yeah, like,
Bucharest,
if you were to
5th and
ask me
6th at
what's the
Melbourne. Like that's not.
story of Liquid, I don't know the story of Liquid at the moment, you know what I mean? It's like they just feel like a middle performance team, and that's what they are.
It just doesn't get like the juices flowing. You know what I mean? Like it just like there's nothing going on down there. It's which is a shame. Like you said, they're a legacy brand in the space, and they have so much history behind them. And but it's like almost like they've in a way they've like lost their connection to their history. They have Naf and Twist from the legendary team, but it's almost it's almost like you think of Twist. At least for me, I think of Twist as someone who came from FaZe rather than someone who's like making a homecoming to Liquid. I think because Twist is now like a dyed in the wool European player as well from his time with FaZe, and it just doesn't inspire a lot of like excitement or even confidence for that matter.
Yeah.
It's quite sad actually. I think too. There's been a lot of talk about like how long their general manager Steve Joka Steve can last in this role because he's been there for 10 plus years now. Was that the oh you were scratching? Were you scratching your head or was that like the
Oh, yeah, same.
world's smallest violin? I thought we were getting ready for the world's smallest violin for him, and it's like sometimes he hits with his moves, but like recently, if you like just think about it, like you know, they had Patsy and Rainmaker that ended up being a nothing burger. You had them bring in Zeus's coach. That wasn't particularly exciting. Skulls did end up being a huge hit for them. Cadian was kind of a mess. Kinder became a complete disaster after a while for them. And then they had JKS, and you would see JKS being like, it made sense for them to cut him out of the roster, but at the same time, you're like, oh, you cut JKS, but you would want more from him for what he can bring to the table, and it just I feel like recently like Liquid just doesn't strike when the iron is hot on roster moves.
You almost wonder, like, if there's a level of comfortability in the middle ground place that they're at, where maybe they're not striving to try to reach that next level again. They're just kind of like, cool, we're a name state brand. As long as we can like coast off merch sales and stuff, maybe we're fine. But I don't know. It feels like the fire. When I used to think of Liquid, I used to think of a team that was like in whatever sport they did, they were dominant. They wanted to be number one. They went for glory. And like I don't think of Liquid as a team that's like going to be number one. Like it just doesn't feel like a goal for them.
I think I agree 100%. I mean, when I first got into esports, Liquid was like my team as well. When I first got into Counter Strike, it was following Liquid as like my panache, and it's their last title was at IEM Chicago 2019. So if they don't win this major or win Dallas, their last title after the player break will have been 6 years ago, which is like for an org of Liquid's pedigree is an unacceptably long time for to not win a significant title on the international stage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's also weird because like they have the funding. Oh, obviously no one really knows the back end books, right? But like it seems on paper that they would have the funding to go toe to toe with some larger organizations if they really wanted to. But like I said, it just feels like they're not hungry for that. Like it just doesn't make sense for their business model to maybe spend triple on player salaries for moving that goalpost or whatever it is. It just feels like it's not a metric they're worried about.
mm, I think after this major they really need to like look into whether are we going to become a European team and maybe maybe say goodbye to NAF and Twist and go full European, or are we going to recommit to being an NA team and maybe bet on some younger talents like Complexity did. I mean, obviously Complexity hasn't really achieved anything this year, but we have seen them trending upwards with their young roster. There is talent out there in North America, but I think the eternal problem with Liquid is the talent in North America is never established enough for them to be like this is a level. These players aren't of the level that we want to see on Liquid. But then the European talent they're going for, they're not able to completely break the bank. I mean, there's no guarantee. For example, I think everyone would say Shuhei is a good move, but there's no guarantee he stays after the major. His loan's only until after the major. So do they try to buy him out? Can they buy him out? Are Mouths willing to sell to a potential rival long term? We don't know. And if they lose Shuhei, where does that just put him back completely, back on the drawing board for what they're going to do in the second half of the year? It's very, it's very concerning for them.
Yeah, and I often wonder how many of like when you look at an org like Liquid, especially that has so many other teams as well and such a larger operation, right? Like how important is their Counter-Strike piece to them? So it's like with Cloud9, like Cloud9 left this year because it was obvious that Counter-Strike was just not that large of a piece of their business model for them. When they looked at, hey, we are an esports org for sustainability purposes, they went, we don't really need to be in Counter-Strike. And so you wonder, like, at what point does Liquid come to a point like that too? Or does Liquid say, hey, like, we don't need to be a top four. We don't need to be a top one in North America. We just need to be there. Or is it, hey, if we're going to be here, we need to be the best and we really need to start stepping it up? Like you said, maybe move full European or something.
I think part of it too was obviously they were one of the darlings of the revenue share era of Counter Strike, where they were part of the Louvre agreement, they're part of the Blast agreement, so they had these pipelines that to offset the cost of the team while not necessarily having to achieve. But now that we're in this open circuit, it's really it's really I think refocused the need for this team to continue to be relevant. And I don't really. I mean, of course, I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to it. I don't even know if Liquid views it as a crisis, because they'll keep getting based on their VRs right now. They'll keep obviously getting invites to events. Either they're high enough where they can continue coasting off this, winning enough matches to be a consistent face on the on the tier one circuit. But is that is that enough for them? I don't necessarily know. I don't know if I guess you'd have to see like where things are after the major, see like the temperature of the fans, see the temperature of the org, get a real reading for who, where the fans and where the community and where the team itself feels that this org, if they're trending in the right direction or if they're, heading downwards.
Yeah, there's just so many metrics that orgs have to look at when evaluating, like, what do we do with this team? And I know a lot of times the fans are at a disconnect from that, where the fans can't quite understand not making a roster move or making a roster move. But it's like there's so many business metrics that the org has to look at. So it will be interesting to see what Liquid does after the major, if anything, or if they just kind of continue this. Because it feels like they've been able to just okay, well, we can just maintain being high enough in North American VRS that we're gonna monetize just to going to all the tier 1 events. So it's like they don't need to really push to be better.
For what it's worth, I would absolutely hate to be their manager because all the players they have on their team, you don't want, maybe except for Ultimate, all the players in their team, you don't want other orgs to have. So every time you make a roster move, you run the risk of getting rid of a gem and, ending up with something like Cadian where, you think that'll be a bombshell move and it just doesn't meet expectations. But you give away another player and maybe he kicks ass on another org. You feel like you look like dickheads because like, oh, why'd you get rid of Nerds? He's kicking ass now on, I don't know, like G2 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we see that happen a lot, right? Like, the community pushback after a decision is made where they're like, you're an idiot. That player is so much better than you guys ever," you know? But it's like, there's so many other factors that go into how well a player performs. It's like sometimes they need to be on another roster to actually play well.
It's we didn't necessarily plan for this, but that's actually a great point you brought there, like the community reaction to a roster move. um I almost, your organization Marsborne and then the German organization Blue Jays, I feel like are like interwoven in many ways because you both stepped into Counter Strike at the same time. You of course like a pivotal narrative building block for both teams was the Frag X block. You failing in that sort of best of 5 series versus them was very like evocative. It was very like a sexy storyline. And then they go ahead and they cut Wolf right after that win. Do you have any thought? Do you have any thoughts on that? I know obviously you've been sort of on social media, kind of changing their chain, provoking them about that change. What's going on in your head about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the internal stuff going on with that team and the dynamics. So, in terms of if that player change was the correct move for them to be where they need to be, I can't speak to that. That may have been exactly what needs to be happen, right, for the longevity of the team. But for me, like making a change like that right before the MRQ feels really weird because so from my perspective, right, you and your team grew and you won that together. The highs, the lows, all of that, that was an achieved goal, right? So let's say that team should then have that chance together. Let's say your team makes it through the MRQ and those 5 guys are going to the major. The idea of cutting one of them out and switching a roster then feels really weird because like those 5 guys busted their ass the whole season to get that opportunity. They earned that opportunity and then you took it from them. But with that being said, it's like there's almost never a correct time to make a roster change because the nature of how competition in this works, like we're in a tournament every other week, if not 2 a week. So there's always going to be a time where if we made a roster change, it would be during a moment that's not the best time to do it because we're during a tournament, we're before a large thing, before this event, during the middle of this event. So there's always going to be some issue with it. But like you're saying, like what was really interesting with that is the community backlash specifically around it, or rather the community discourse around it, is the fans only ever see one side of the coin, and that side is the only side they want to see. And if there is another perspective, like let's say Snav and Dare and all them said, like, no, actually, like we just didn't get along well with Wolfie. And from a team dynamic standpoint, it just wasn't working. Um, there's not a lot of fans who would go, okay, cool. We get that. We want you guys to succeed, right? They really just see the one side they want. So I don't know that I really have like a personal opinion on if they should have done it or not done it, especially because I don't know the players and their dynamic and how well they're doing. Not being a GM of their team, I'm not able to listen to comms, and hear how dynamics were needing to be shifted or adjusted. But I personally, like when we set out to set this project, my goal with Marsborne was I wanted to take 5 North American guys and build a team with those 5. Now, throughout the year, we may have to make a roster change, and that's already stuff we've discussed, but, like, I don't want to, unless it is an absolute necessity, because I feel like in Counter-Strike, roster changes happen way too fast, and they happen too often, where in order for a team to really become a great team, all 5 players need to grow together, working on their communication, their dynamics, because you have to grow to a level of trust where I instinctually know what you're going to do when I do this. I need to know that when I rotate over here, we've played enough times that you're going to do X. That's guarantees the round. And I think too many teams, especially because dynamics of switching out players are normally made by younger, less mature people who just go, "Oh, I'm not we lost a match, so I wanna get rid of this guy," or, "We don't get along all the time, so I wanna get rid of this guy," and they don't have the ability to think, critical long-term thinking skills that say, "Okay, this we're not doing as well right now, but is there a threshold we can cross with this team that nets us a better output at the end of it than if we were to say, fuck it, let's make a roster change. Let's adjust this or this so I have a better time today. Where when the long term net isn't a better result.
Yeah, it's like you said, they've been very close. They've been very closed off about like why they got rid of him. So it's hard to even understand like whether it was necessary or not. The only thing like my attempts to sort of suss out like why it happened is apparently Wolf's just kind of a weird dude. Like I was telling some people, like apparently like use like a brain rot term. Like apparently he just kind of had like L Riz, like and that was like just like they just like didn't really get along with him, so they're like, okay, like we've had enough of this dude, like it's time for him to go. So I don't think there's really anything more we can say on that other than like I mean I think it's kind of objectively the timing was really bad, but I still hope the team's successful. Ultimately like the Blue Jays project is pretty. It's important for two reasons. One, that Boss Core has been around forever and they deserve to finally have some success. And it's the first time in a damn long time we've had a European organization come in and sign an NA roster. Like, it's important for our scene that that roster achieves some level of success and doesn't just implode into infighting or, irrelevancy because with European rosters being as expensive as they are, there's a world in which these tier two, tier three European orgs say, "Oh, I can get an NA roster for much cheaper," have them climb the flagpole on the VRS and maybe get them to go to a smaller LAN. That could be a lucrative opportunity for these smaller orgs, and it could be something that would be really great for the NA scene as well. So I'm hoping that like they eventually internally are like, yes, we made the right choice. Now let's cut noise and get back to work and make things kind of come together and find success.
Yeah, I'd like to see Blue Jays do well. One, because the players individually have been working their asses off for a long time. I've spoken to a couple of them, like Fruit Cup and Snav, a couple times, and like they're really, they're good dudes. Like I want to see them succeed and have success. But the same reasons you're talking about is North American Counter Strike is just sadly underfunded at the moment, and there's not a lot of opportunities for players to develop in a career. And so I want things that lead to more opportunities for more players, whether that's European orgs coming in and funding or more funding coming in internally. Just we need more of that. We need the scene to continue to grow and feed itself.
100%. And with that, a big part of the stickers, and now we're going to lead into our final topic of the night is we have the major right around the corner as well. It kind of snuck up on me. Do you know the major starting in like 25 days or something ridiculous like that?
Quicker
Isn't
than
that
I would have thought.
isn't that crazy? Like I was because we're working internally on accommodation for Dallas and accommodation for the Austin major, and I was like, oh well, we still have like a good amount of time. It's less than a month. The major starts in
Yeah,
less
you're
than a
now
month.
making me realize I still have to get my travel accommodation
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
bought my ticket forever ago, but I don't have
You
my
you
my
paid
hotel.
the iron price and paid like $500 for a ticket.
Yep.
That still is absolutely absurd that tickets for the major are like $500. Like it's like folks, like it's not like NBA playoffs or it's not like the World Series or the Super Bowl. Like that we're still struggling to get asses and shit. We're still in some ways struggling to get asses and chairs and get players to buy shit. Like I'd rather ticket be cheaper and then try to get the players or get the fans to buy like some merch, buy some sody pops, buy some
Yeah, I mean,
popcorn.
fans have trouble buying a $40 T-shirt. A $500 ticket's a big ask.
And apparently they sold out, but they're not going to be buying a damn other thing from the Moody Center, like that's for sure. And because it's like a big part is, I mean, I have to assume Blast isn't the reason the tickets are so expensive. Is I'm assuming it's not a high margin, it's not a high margin product. Tickets themselves, I assume that they have to make them. They're not going to go green just off of tickets. But when you have the tickets that expensive, I don't expect people to really have the money to then get the flights to Austin, to book the Airbnb or the hotel, to feed themselves, to to get Ubers every day to the Moody Center, pay for. I'm assuming it's a city in Texas. I'm assuming they have no mass transit or anything. So like not you're not taking like the bus or the train. You're taking an Uber. So but all those other expenses, like there's nothing else they're going to be able to really to spend on. I mean,
Yeah, like you're asking fans to spend like 4 or 5 grand to come for the weekend.
Yeah, and like there's no way you're gonna like trick your girlfriend into coming who like doesn't watch it. You're like, yeah, babe, let's go to Austin, like the city, one of the America's finest cities. Oh yeah, but it'll cost like $600 for you to come to this video game tournament with me. And she's like, no, I'll just stay home or I'll just stay at the hotel or whatever. It's like unless you're really into it, unless you're really into it. And even then, people still have a hard time getting tickets. So it's like it's a mess from two sides. There's like it's art of it. There's scarcity and there's high prices. It's just ridiculous. Like
Yeah, and I think it one speaks to the demand in North America for more Counter-Strike events, and like the lands and frags don't quite feel right for like a just fan event, right? Like where you would just go watch people compete. It's much more like, hey, you're here competing, you're a part of the community. So it's obvious there's a demand for fans to just go show up and watch stuff, but what that looks like outside of a major that costs $500, I don't know if anyone has an answer to it.
that's what I've had many talks with the frat guy Steve and Ed about that, where I'm like, hey, like if you make the spectator tickets like really cheap, like if you make them like $10, $20, like I'm sure people will come, especially if you're like maybe not so much in Vegas, because Vegas is as much as Vegas is like a tourist city, you're only in Vegas for the main reason of gambling. So, but if you're like in, I don't know, like in Philly or in, Boston or in, Atlanta or whatever, where people actually like, people actually live there, right? I'm sure some people would just be like, "Oh yeah, $10 to go see like some CS teams compete," and if they put out a bunch of seating, like I'm sure it would fill up. It just the kind of dynamics of Frag is they've never had a space except for maybe Kansas City where there's just like a lot of like open seating. I mean, obviously, if you go to the block, like the block probably had the best in terms of open seating, but Tap in the Chinese basement, Philadelphia's Chinatown basement, like that's not a place you would really go to spectate. I mean, it was like 100 degrees down there and smelled. Um, Kansas City unfortunately was in the middle of nowhere, so that didn't really make a ton of sense. Um, thinking back to other frag venues, unfortunately they're not like really spectator driven, but it'd be great to see like a spectator driven frag event, especially if you could get more European teams to come up, maybe for like Frag 20.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want one down here in Atlanta. I think it would make a lot of sense to have it in Atlanta.
That'd be sick, yeah, and easy and real nice for us, right? Like
Yep.
easy commute. Take your car, drive up there, park it. No flights, no airports. It's I live in Columbus, right? And there's a little convention center, and I keep trying to mentally accept the concept into the frat guys of like, yeah, you could have a frag down in Columbus, and people could drive from Florida and Atlanta, and it'd be great, and I could just go to bed in my bed at home every night, and it'd be so
That'd be
cheap for
perfect.
me. I could just justify it to Better Collective by saying like, oh yeah, no flights, no gas, no hotel, just yeah. But
Yeah,
I
it'd be a
forgot.
lot cheaper for us.
Oh yeah. Now to close up and to close out, this has been a great podcast so far with you. So thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for
We
having me.
have the major right around the corner. We have a couple NA teams in the form of we got Liquid, we got M80, we got NRG, and Wildcard. Oh, and Complexity, of course.
Mhm.
How are you feeling about the NA troops and heading into the major?
I'm feeling really good. I feel like we probably have the best potential representatives for North America here, and I think a lot of them have been performing probably the best that they've been in a while. Like we already spoke about NRG, obviously kind of going on a tear right now. OC seeming to come back into full form, and hopefully we'll see them really show up. Complexity, I think most people have been incredibly impressed with, especially with the young guns from NA that they have, and they've been able to put this squad together. Like, I just want to see Complexity go far, um, because I think that it's going to put a lot of eyes on North American young talent and get people to start talking about some of the up and coming shooters in North America the way they do Europe. Because it seems like every 2 weeks there's a new this young 15-year-old phenom from somewhere in Europe. It's like every week I see that on Twitter, but no one ever talks about the talent in North America. So I'm hoping that maybe Complexity going the distance and we'll get some more attention there. Um, Wild card, I think, is going to do really well. Obviously, they beat us in the group stage and went on to take that slot. I think they've been playing really well. Um, M80 is probably my favorite team of them.
I fuck with M80. Love
Yeah,
those
like
guys. Yeah.
I really like M80. I don't know why. Like I like the way they play. I like talking to the guys. I think they'll do really well. I think Complexity will probably perform a little better overall, but I'd really like to see M80 like make it to like to me that'd be awesome to see M80 make it to a finals.
I feel like you and their VP Donald Psycho and T. I feel like you guys would fuck with each other, like be all simpatico and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to get a beer when we're in Austin or something because I feel like you guys have very similar mentalities. But speaking of M80, it's like I was thinking about this. Like I feel like I haven't seen a lot of M80 this year. It's like weird in a way because they had that obviously that injury at the start of the year, so they were kind of a write off when they were playing with some German standard, right? They're playing with Keto, so like that didn't really count in my mind. And other than that, the only lands they've been to were Pro League and Blast Open Spring, and they didn't really do a whole lot there. So it's like we've only really seen them play two lands this whole year, and because they don't play in the NA circuit as much anymore, they've only played a handful of maps that like have been on my radar. So like I have no, I have like no expectations for this team heading in. That's not to say like a bad way or anything, just that it's kind of a mystery how they'll perform in my mind.
Yeah, like they do incredibly well in the NA events that we've played against them in and that I've been watching them. But like you're saying, like this year on the grander stage, I haven't really seen enough of them to know. Like I don't have a true testament to where M80 stacks up on a global scale right now, the same way I might have with like Complexity or Liquid, who I've seen consistently at these other events. And I feel like I have a better idea of like, here's how they stack up against someone like G2 or Furia, right? But like M80, I'm a little more like, I think they'll do pretty good, but I haven't seen as much out of them on the grander stage.
So just for the sake of it, we have, we do know our opening matchups for round one.
Okay.
So here's what we got for NA, right? We got Complexities playing OG in their opening match. We got Wildcard playing Fluxo, and Energy are playing Tylo. Wait, yeah, and Complexity OG, Wildcard Fluxo, Energy are playing Tylo. And honestly, for me, those feel like gifts to me. Like those all feel like very winnable
I was about
matches.
to say it sounds like we're getting three NA teams making it through.
Well, it's weird because now this major is like 32 teams. Like this would technically just be a qualifier in days in days past. So it's kind of expected that the team quality is kind of a bit iffy here. But like hell, it's still officially legally it's still the major. So like a complexity, like I could see them shit canning OG in a best of one. I could see
Mhm.
Wildcard beating Fluxo. I mean, like who's even on Fluxo these days? And then Energy, like they could pull off a win against Tyloo. Tyloo aren't even the best team in China anymore, so it's not. So there's no expectation that like these are tough matches for our for our boys.
No, like looking like you're saying, like looking up against the stack up, I think they have a really legitimate chance. Although I will say, like, I've been I don't know what they're putting in the water down in Brazil to be breeding out these super kids. Uh, but South America's becoming really scary.
Who's your favorite Brazilian baby genius?
It's that one kid on Legacy. I'm trying to remember his name. That
Let
I
me.
feel like he just. I know we face them again in like tonight. Yeah, we face them
Apparently,
tonight.
yeah. That's too. ECL playoffs are tonight. I honestly kind of we had to do like an article to be like, hey guys, remember like ECL playoffs are tonight because like the regular season wrapped up like a month ago.
Dumao.
Dumao's the I love that. I love me some Dumao. He used to play with Swisher and those guys back in the day.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. They were on this team called Yeah Gaming, and it was a really weird roster. It was like three Brazilians and two Americans, but it kicked ass. Like
Yeah, definitely, Dumao, I've been paying a lot of attention to, because they I don't wanna use the word wipe the floor with us, but they wiped the floor with us recently, and I was like, "Okay, I have not been paying attention to South America. I need to go do some due diligence and figure out what's happening down there."
well, it's definitely hard for like you guys because like Marsborne and the org specifically because back in like the 2020, 2021, 2022 in ESL Challenger League, we used to have like four Brazilian teams, but they all just went back to Brazil because of the way the VRS works and the way kind of the circuit has been shaking out. So like, you don't really see them play. You don't really see them play like uh, NA events anymore. And of course, as far as I'm aware, like Legacy might be heading back to Brazil for the season as well. Like they might finish up here. They might play like one more Eagle Master Series, and they might like head home. So but they're
Yeah,
in
and
the
it
top
seems
8.
like I've heard good things about the scene down there in terms of there actually being events and lands. So I could be mistaken, but I swear I've been hearing people who are down in Brazil saying that they have good opportunities for LAN events, which is nice.
I would just love for them to be like open sign up, like you said. Unfortunately, the big issue is I almost feel like it's cheaper for a Brazilian team to come here than it is for an American team to go there. In some ways,
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. What the like It's also so weird with like the roster rules for like how long you need to live somewhere for X amount of time of the year. So like I'm still kind of learning a lot of that as well of like what makes a team considered NA versus South American, right? So like Legacy's obviously competing in the ECL North American, um, the ESL Challengers League North America,
right?
despite being a South American team with 5 South American players. So it's like, but the ruling was I think that like they live here though, right?
Well,
So it's like
they're almost like a legacy hire, and they're like a legacy in a way because this season of ECL they got invited from the last season of ECL, but
that's
next
right.
season is going to be 100% VRS. So I don't know. I'm not 100% like they should like so we're working on our invites for the second Eagle Master, INUI's second Eagle Master Series. Right now, we're working on getting our invites sorted out. And I shot their manager an invite because, in my opinion, they should be an NA team for invites. But it's like weird. Like Valve gives you a little bit of like a rope. They give you like a little bit of rope, you might say, or like a little bit of leeway, so they might count them. They might be an NA squad, but they might not. But I don't know if you know that Peruvian team like Lobo Army.
Mhm.
I don't know if like I would love to invite them again because they performed way better than I thought than anyone thought they would in our event. So I would like to invite them again, but I don't think I'm allowed to because they're South American and they live in South America. But Legacy are South American, but they live in NA. But then obviously once Legacy moved back to South America, I don't think they have any NA connection anymore. So it's
Hmm.
weird.
It's hard navigating, right?
It is. Believe me, it is.
No, like I mean, we're still even now like okay, like obviously with the roster changes that we had at the beginning of the year when we took over a core that was an undone roster, and then we switched some stuff and had our roster come in, but then we had another game where Beaky was our roster fill in, and that's technically part of another, right? So it's like all of the early ECL matches technically could fall under 3 different cores for us. But since none of that is counted until the conclusion of the event after that update came out, it's like we're even still trying to figure out like formulaically, are we going to get every point from all the matches or only some of the matches after the first 8 when the roster adjusts? Or do we lose this one because then Beaky and then that was
Oh
the
yeah, it's
undone
insane.
rust?
Like,
So yeah, it's like there's so much since like there's no one to just call and be like, hey, if my 4 Brazilian players live in North America for 4 months, can we be an NA team? And they go, yeah, that's fine. You
yeah,
go,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
cool.
Well, with that as well, like I'm sure the VRS standings will change a ton once ECL is over because all those points will just spill out, and because so when we did the invites for the first Eagle Master Series, fortunately, we were able to get you guys in because you got all those points from Frag Block. Because originally we were like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to play the open qualifier, but the big thing now, like with this series compared to the original series, is all the points from ESL Impact got put in. So I have like potentially 3 or 4 Impact teams that are eligible for invites. So I have like technically I can invite Supernova Comments, FlyQuest Red, the former announced B roster, maybe even Ghost if I get down that far the Ross, get that far down the list, and like because their event just ended, so all those points just come flushing forward.
Hmm.
It's a constantly shifting. It seems like these constantly shifting sands where these longer form events end, and then all these VRS points get unlocked.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes it hard for you to try to like pre-plan ahead of time. You're like, okay, if my invites go out on this date, then I cannot even determine who my invites are until the day before.
Pretty much. Like I went and did the list. I shot y'all on invite. I shot a bunch of teams at invite last night, and it was like, oh, this list is completely different from the list that I had last series. There's very little like continuity between the 2 lists, and of course now all these teams, because the major's going on, they don't want to play this event, which is like fair enough, but what can you do?
Yeah, it makes it hard to try to juggle around it all.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with that, that's probably a good time for us to cut things off. So I'll let you, where can we find you? Where can we find Marsborne?
So you can find Marsborne at marsborne.com or on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at Marsborne Gaming. Stay tuned for all the updates. We're going to be competing a lot and putting out a lot of content over the next year. We hope you guys will stick around for the ride. Really excited to be doing this.
And what about you yourself, Mr. Cashmere?
Oh yeah, I am at Sedowicz, or you can just search Cashmere. Sedowicz is a
Sometimes
little harder to
Twitter
find.
search doesn't really work. Sometimes you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, basically, if you want to find me, you got to know a guy, and he'll put you in touch.
And for me, you know where I am. I mean, I would struggle to imagine how you could find this podcast without knowing me. Twitter.com/Mnmzzz. With that in mind, I'll just give a quick shout out to our sponsor who made this podcast and who made the Dustiest Eagle Masters possible. Hold on, Inu, you say it.
INUI.
INUI Gaming. There we go. INUI Gaming, who are a new matchmaking platform in North America, and their whole pitch to you guys is, after we did this discussion about the issues with Smurfs, with cheaters, with DMA, with people play on alt accounts, all this nonsense that's going on in the NA scene right now. Their pitch to you is if you sign up to their platform, everyone who plays on their platform, whether it's in qualifiers, whether it's in matchmaking, whether it's in tournaments, you have to do identity verification with a third-party platform that keeps all your information safe. But once you're there, you can't have any alt accounts, you can't have any Smurfs. They are developing a new in-house anti-cheat system that's completely unique to them. It doesn't, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't build on any technology that came before. It doesn't, build on easy anti-cheat or what face its implementation. There's a new system that combines the best features of a traditional anti-cheat as well as AI tools to watch the matches as they're happening and feed that data into their system so they can eventually determine if a player does something that's impossible, the AI will flag it as like, hey, this is abnormal based on all these other matches I've watched. So, if you're interested in signing up for INUI, I strongly recommend you go to it's actually a really simple URL. You can't make it up. INUI.com, and you'll be able to download the client there. It's also some other unique things I like about it is they have a phone. They have a phone app, so you can do all your like login and your identity verification there. They're running the next series of Dustiest Eagle Masters. We're going to be starting the qualifiers for that on Saturday, so be sure to sign up for that. And we'll have 3 more Dustiest Eagle Master Series, each with a $10,000 prize pool. And I've heard some rumors in the INUI rumor mill that they might be also running some standalone NA events of their own. So you definitely want to get signed up now, and you're not going to want to miss out on this new platforming service, this new game experience that's trying to uplift the NA scene and give us something to, give us some competition in the monopoly, fight back against the monopoly that has currently dominated the NA space. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you for the next episode of Best of 5